Welcome to Permission to Heal. I am Marcy Brockman, and I am so glad you're here. In this podcast, we engage in meaningful, deeply human conversations using our voices to inspire connection, compassion, understanding, empathy, and wholehearted wellness. I want you to find the courage to transform yourself no matter what others tell you. Only you can give yourself permission to trust yourself, permission to take care of yourself, permission to follow your heart and desires, and build a life of love, home, and belonging. Through sharing our stories, we will help each other to heal and create the healthy, meaningful lives we richly deserve. We only need our own permission to begin. Hi everyone, it's Marcy. Welcome to Permission to Heal. In today's episode, I interview a lovely gentleman named Faust Ruggerio. Faust has a very interesting professional career spanning almost 40 years. His experience is diversified and compelling, and he has consistently established new and exciting cutting-edge counseling programs in the pursuit of professional excellence and personal life enhancement. He's a published research author, a clinical trainer, and a therapist who has worked in settings that have included clinics for deaf children, prisons, nursing homes, substance abuse centers, inpatient facilities, and as the president of the Community Psychological Center in Bangor, Pennsylvania. In that capacity, he developed the Process Way of Life counseling program and has developed it into a formal text, a book presented as the Fix Yourself Handbook. Faust has provided counseling for deaf children, for alcoholics and substance abusers, for individuals and families, for abuse victims, for couples and marriage counseling, for veterans, for first responders, law enforcement, and other emergency personnel. Following several years of experimentation regarding the various therapeutic approaches, Faust developed and began utilizing his Process Way of Life program, which consists of over 50 internal human processes that can be accessed and developed to help clients address the various conditions that were affecting their lives, behavior, biochemical, psychological, and biological, the mind-body connection. After the program was developed, it has been vigorously researched and tested, and changes were made, culminating in the approach presently being used by Mr. Ruggiero at the Community Psychological Center. In the summer of 2016, Mr. Ruggiero decided to develop the Process Life program into a text that, once published, would help people in need address the difficult situations that are affecting their lives. The Fix Yourself Handbook was completed in December 2019, and the Fix Yourself Handbook received the Silver Award from the Nonfiction Authors Association. In May of 2020, it received the Gold Award from Literary Titan. On September 1st, it received the Bronze Award from Reader's Favorite. It has appeared on television and radio shows and podcasts discussing the Process Way of Life presented in the Fix Yourself Handbook, both nationally and internationally. And it has spawned a radio show called Fix It with Faust, which debuted about 8 or 9 months ago. And the Fix It Yourself Handbook 2, The Journey Continues, is currently in development. We have a wonderful conversation about giving ourselves back power to control, to affect happiness in our lives, about unraveling and digging deep to figure out that all the things that we need to give us happiness and peace and love and meaning in our lives, we have already inside of us. And I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as we did. Thanks so much for listening. Please give us a 5-star review and like and subscribe and share with your friends and family. Every time you hit the subscribe button, it helps the podcast be heard by more people. Every time you leave us a 5-star review, it boosts the ratings and allows me to bring this amazing healing journey to the people who need to hear it. So please consider doing that. Thanks so much. Hi.
Hi, Marcy. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. I started the recording immediately because I did an interview at noon that I must say was probably the best interview podcast conversation I've ever conducted, and I forgot to hit record. And I didn't realize that I forgot to hit record until I was trying to end the recording and there was nothing to end. I was so upset. I was embarrassed. Mad at myself, totally unprofessional, wasted this man's hour. I was so upset. He was so generous and so kind, telling me not to beat myself up, that these kinds of things happen, whatever, we would just reschedule and do it again, But the whole time I was having this out of body experience, this whole meta analysis while we were talking, that this was so great an episode.
Those of us who have done a lot of these, and I've done a lot, we expect every now and then something's just going to go wrong, Right. So we program it as part of the business. That's just the way it is.
Right. Little crazy, whatever. I'm sort of out of practice. I guess I haven't conducted an interview. I took 3 weeks off to take a couple of trips with my family, and today's the first day back in the seat, so to speak. So it's all good. So you have a fish tank behind you. Who's living in there?
I'm sorry?
Who's living in there?
Those are my friends. I've had fish tanks all my life, so this is kind of like my operations center. I write here, I do interviews, everything's done here. So I kind of loaded it up with all the things that bring peace and all the good stuff you look for in life, keep them in one room, and this is where I go.
That's great. Yeah, my husband's a fish keeper, and we have 7 fish tanks in the house, and with live fish in them, and 3 or 4 more in our back sunroom patio that are in various processes of stages of repair. But he's breeding guppies, and he's breeding angelfish, and he's got cichlids and snails and live plants, and it's always a thing. It's good. I do this hub of a room is the recording studio for the podcast and all my social media videos, and it's also my art studio where I paint and write and This is like the creative room. My daughter's painted on all the walls, so it's fun. Okay, so shall we just dive in?
Let's go.
Okay, I do the intros after, so we're just going to dive into the conversation, start with the 6 quick questions, and see where we go.
Sounds great.
Okay, so welcome to Permission to Heal. I am Marcy Brockman. I am thrilled that you are here, and today I have with me Faust Ruggerio?
Oh, Faust Ruggerio.
Faust Ruggerio. All right, we'll fix that in the editing. Faust. It's an interesting name.
It's Italian, you know. When the ancestors came over, they chopped the O off, Fausto. So let's make everybody sound American. So all it did for the 3 or 4 of us that have the name, we get mistakes. That's just the way it is.
That's triggers something in my memory from undergrad literature studies.
Yeah, there was an old that was Faust, as I remember.
I think that's why I got the mispronunciation. Yeah. Cool. So you hail from Pennsylvania.
I do.
Not so far from the New York where I am. Nice. I've only been to Pennsylvania a few times.
Everyone from New York is coming to Pennsylvania now.
Yeah, a few times.
The city is emptying. We're not far from the Pocono Mountains, and particularly with COVID, it's to get a house. People say to buy a house there, you can list your house 40 or 50,000 above what it's worth, and the people from New York will come in and pay 50,000 above that.
Wow. Just looking to get out of New York.
And they all want to get out of town, yeah.
Yeah. Well, New York was the epicenter of COVID for quite a long time.
Yeah, it was.
I know one of my sisters lives in the city and was doing everything she could to just not be there. So staying at relatives' houses just to not be in Manhattan. Anyway, let's dive in. We have our 6 quick questions. That's a Permission to Heal staple. So what 6 words would you use to describe yourself?
For me, I've been around a long time, and you kind of mold who you want to be. I'd start with passion for me. I don't do much in my life without a whole lot of passion. My wife always says, please don't take anything else on because,
Right.
you're 100% in. But, that's where I start. I'm also a very, very grateful person. And not for what I have or what, comes my way. I like to think about gratitude being inside me, and then, for all the little things. It's just there, and it wraps itself around everything else that I do. I'm very, very much a loving person. I think that's something that once you start working with yourself and clearing out the debris and doing all that, that's what comes into the picture. I keep myself very humble. The more I acquire intellectually or whatever, the more I'm a student of life. So, my way is always to keep that flow going. So you got to stay humble to do that. I'm a very honest person with myself. I think that would be maybe sometimes honest to a fault, but I just believe that honesty is the best friend I have. It keeps me away from defenses and agendas and all those things that we can all get caught up. And I would say I'm a very engaged person. I don't think anyone that knows me will say, well, he's kind of half in.
That goes with the passion.
Yeah, it does. I'm engaged. If I'm doing something as we're doing right now, I'm 100% in. I'll leave here and I'm going to have an evening full of counseling people, and I'm going to be 100% in there, and then you come home and you do it with family. So that's just the way I am.
That's the way it is. Okay. Yeah, I think that in order to be passionate, you have to be engaged, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
They go hand in hand. Okay, question number 2. What is your favorite way to spend a day?
For me, I like to maximize my potential in anything I do. So, and I'm an in-service person. I've been counseling people for over 40 years. So if I had to answer that, if I can help anyone or a whole lot of people, that's going to be the way I like to spend my day. At the end of the day, regardless of what came my way or what, we bought or what we did, if at the end of the day I didn't help someone out, I kind of feel like the day has been, something's amiss that day. So that's beautiful. Kind of my thing.
That's beautiful. It's very rewarding and brings my life meaning as well, knowing that the things that I do that bring me joy also connect with other people and help them along their journey.
Yeah,
That's pretty
absolutely.
amazing. I also like days like I had yesterday where I wasn't feeling well, and I canceled my whole day, and I sat in the house by myself and I watched TV and I read and I noodled around on my computer, but I did relatively nothing. And occasionally that's very restorative. Can't make a life of that, but
Some people do, but no, you're right. You cannot make a life of that.
no. But it restores
What does? Well, you
my
know what?
own sense,
Yeah,
reconnects me with myself, and
it's a reboot. That's what it is. You get away from everything. Your mind's fresh when you come back. And I'll do all those things too, but I'm not one. I can't sit long. So if I'm going to reboot, I'll go out and I'll make it a day where I'm working with my hands or something
mhm.
like that. But me and disconnect don't they don't work too well.
I've actually had to practice at it. I used to feel guilty if I wasn't always in motion being productive.
Yeah.
If I had the TV on, I was also paying bills, or I was also cleaning the house, or and it's taken me a long time to be able to just sit and enjoy a movie on the television in my own house and not feel like I have to multitask that to death.
Well, that's actually a permission thing.
Yeah.
You have to get to the point where you can say, you know what, I'm doing a lot. I may have been going for 10 or 12 or 14 days. I can give myself permission to take at least the morning off.
Right.
And when I say permission, it has to be conscious. You actually have to say, it's okay if I do this. I
Yeah,
deserve this.
I
It's all
have to
right.
say it out loud, or
Yeah.
I don't get to do it guilt free. Like I've been battling this sinus infection for 3 weeks, and I haven't allowed myself respite to heal because we had 2 trips planned and a family wedding, and we were on planes, and it was like 3 weeks of travel, and we just got home Tuesday night. And I have given myself permission to have the bulk of this week since we got home to just rest my body so that I can heal. And guess what? I'm feeling better.
You will. Yeah.
No brainer there. All right. Number 3. What is your favorite childhood memory?
Childhood memory. So many was, when I look back, it was a much simpler time when I was young. I'm in my 60s now, so I was born in the 50s, and when I look back, it was just the kids on the street getting together and playing. We were outside. There was no such thing as connect to the internet or the cell phone or
Right.
or anything like that. So it was left to us. I think we were far more creative people.
Mm-hmm.
Really had to make something of nothing, and we did it every day. And through that, we got to know each other very, very well. And those associations I'm fortunate. Some of them are still in the picture. Some folks are still around, and there's still wonderful friendships with a whole lot of depth and a whole lot of love in them. So when I go back to that, I think about those times. It could be something as simple at the park behind the house, or one guy had a tree we could climb, and we could sit in that tree sometimes 2 or 3 hours. And you look back and say, well, we did nothing, but we did a lot. We
Yeah.
really connected. You talk about connecting today. We really connected then.
Yeah, I have a lot of memories of that too. I was born in the late 60s, and we just did a whole mess of neighborhood kids all around the same age, and with bikes and big wheels and all sorts of
Right.
pretend games in each other's houses and yards. And the parents would always say, to go out of the house. They didn't want us in the house. So we're always these pretend games, climbing trees, and really amazing things that I don't think even my own children ever
Oh,
experienced.
they don't. And I was with our children. I was always saying, "Let's go outside," and I was pushing them out, and I go out with them because I knew how valuable that was. And put a basketball hoop in the driveway
Mm-hmm.
and the swimming pool in the backyard. And what we found was that all the kids were coming to our house. We were
Right.
the hub. Because that's what we provided. We were willing to do that. And
Sure.
the other part is, I guess parents aren't willing to do that today. Too bad, but it's a great thing.
Absolutely. Question 4. What is your favorite meal?
Well, you're talking to an Italian here, so it's gonna it's gonna lie in there somewhere. Probably, lasagna, spaghetti, those kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things. It's what we were raised on. You saw that 2 or 3 times a week, and it's the
Big pot of
simplest.
gravy on the stove all day Sunday.
Oh, yeah, and you called it the right thing. When I say gravy, they say gravy. You mean tomato sauce? And I said, well, it depends what house you lived in, I guess, growing up.
Right.
But it's not just the taste of the food that's attached to a lot of old memories, because
Food is love.
we were in the house. The moms cooked at that time, and grandparents cooked, and you got together for Sunday dinners and all those things, and that was the staple. It was kind of built around that. So you're right. There's a lot of love with that particular
Mm-hmm.
meal.
Jews and Italians have a lot of that same
Yeah.
similarity
Yes.
in their cultural makeup. My mom grew up in Brooklyn, and their neighbors directly downstairs in their apartment building was an Italian family. And my mom was always in Aunt Mary's kitchen and probably knew how to cook good old world Italian food just as much as the, culturally Jewish stuff. So
Yeah.
it was just side by side, even when I grew up in the suburbs, pretty amazing. Number 5, what one piece of advice would you like to give your younger self?
You know, having to learn along the way, uh, growing up, like everyone else, I thought I had to find all these things that were going to be important to me. And I realized, and which is what I teach now, it's what my program is about, my book, everything's already inside us. It's already there. That's where you have to go to find your world, not
Mm-hmm.
out there. The world is in here. Everything, your physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, it's all in here. And if I knew that when I was in my 20s, I might be ruling the world today. I don't know, but
It's
it,
huge.
it is huge when you realize that, and you stop looking for outside influences to make you feel better or to complete you. Life changes.
Yeah, I didn't know, like you, I didn't know that any of those things were there inside me, and always was looking external to myself for everything
Yes.
and never found it because it's not
Well, you're
there.
not going to, it's not there.
It's not there. Right. And it took me probably until my late 30s, early 40s to start figuring out that all of the things that I was looking for were here in my center if I had the courage to untangle and dig it out.
Right.
And that's been the process since then. And eventually led to this podcast being born because we're giving ourselves permission to do these things.
Exactly.
Exactly. The last question. What is one thing you would most like to change about the world?
I would probably go with negativity. It's become a very negative place to live.
Mm-hmm.
People attack before they get to know each other. But even that part of it, I'd like to see people be more positive with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If we are more positive with ourselves, if the internal language we have is good, if we're looking at for positives, if we're getting up with good affirmations about how we're going to live our day, then we bring that out to the rest of the world. So I'd love to see people do what we said: go inside, find all that good. You're not just going to find stuff that has to be fixed. There's a lot of beauty and a lot of good stuff inside us
Mm-hmm.
once we're willing to go in and get it. And when you do that and learn to talk to yourself and feel good about yourself, that's what you bring out to the rest of the world. I'd love to see people do that.
It's hard. I find I'm a very generous and kind person with other people. And what I have figured out now that I'm 53, what I have figured out is a lot of my own internal dialogue about myself is things that I would never in 1,000 years think to say to another person. It's just so mean and so judgmental and so full of shame that I would never in 1,000 years even think that about somebody else. And so I'm trying very hard to learn how to not do that. And when I catch myself, I try to flip the script, not to be cliche, and turn it around.
what I tell
It's
people
tough.
and what I've used for myself that works is that's going to happen. It's an autopilot kind of thing. And what if it starts with me, I just say consciously say I'm not going there. It
Hmm.
will start. I know it's going to start. Then I reverse the trend. If I try to reverse it without stopping it first, they kind of blend together, and sooner or later I just go back to the old stuff. So I got to a point where I said, not going there. I'm not thinking that because
Hmm.
it's real easy for it to happen. People we're trying to grow and get better, but the world isn't always going to cooperate. So there's always a place to find negativity. Go back into our own past, find it there. So, I don't get boisterous about it. I'm not getting arrogant about it. I'm just saying, you know what? There's good stuff in here. I'm going to go get that. I'm not letting that other toxin come in and get to me. So when it does, I'm just saying, I'm going to stop you in your tracks. That's what I started doing. I almost got arrogant with that part. I said, no, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Then I can get humble and go, you know, think about how I'm going to help someone or think good thoughts and good thoughts about me. Because if I can't think good thoughts about me, I know I'm going to attack someone else because our natural way to do things is even the playing field. So I'd rather even in a positive way than and you don't have to say anything to someone. It's spinning in your head. Well, that person is, and you have that internal dialogue with them that
Hmm.
doesn't even really exist. And who wants to go there? So I stop it quickly, because it's going to keep on coming. I don't
Sure.
think anyone is void of that. I
No.
really don't.
No. To a larger, a varying degree. I I'm some sort of under this impression that everybody had a very fluid and noisy internal dialogue, because I tend to analyze and overanalyze, or at least just narrate in my own head everything that I do. But I teach high school English also, and in talking to students over the last several years, I've come to realize that not everybody has the extent of an internal dialogue that I thought we all did. There are some people for which it is very quiet up there.
Hmm. I've often envied that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I said the motor seems to be running all the time, and even if it's idling, it doesn't have to be at a fever pitch, but it's
Right.
always seems to be going, and as long as it's open and running, it pulls things in, So and that's I've envied them. I said, man, you guys don't think about anything, you just go from A to B, and everything is, it's not okay. You just don't question it. Well, I don't, I'm not set up that way, and I know that, so I put the stops in where they need to be.
Makes sense. Makes sense. As we get to know ourselves,
Hmm.
we begin to figure out how to do that for ourselves. Okay, so let's dive in. Well, I would love you to tell us about your book and your Fix Yourself Handbook, your process way of life. Like, I've been reading your website and excerpts from your book, and nobody could say this better than you can. So let's just launch in. Tell us about the book, how you started writing, etc.
I was the kid who was always in service of other people. I guess I was the listener. I was the kid in high school people, friends came to and talked to. And so I naturally went into this. So now I'm in college and graduate school, and you're learning this is the way you should help people. These are the theories, and then got into private practice and actually sat down with people and say, okay, throw the book out. It was great learning. It gave me a lot of depth. It gave me a lot to draw on, but um, these things just don't apply like they said they were going to apply. So I began weeding this out and throwing that out and putting this in. And what I started to realize was that stuff inside us has a name. They're called processes.
Mm-hmm.
It's honesty, it's gratitude, it's humility. All the things I talked about, they're processes. And if I could teach people the processes and put it into a program that made some sense, it would work. So about 22 years ago now, I started doing that. And it evolved into what I call the process way of life. You don't tell that to people when they come in. Well, welcome, sit down. I'm going to teach you the process way of life. But I
Right.
said, we're
It's a
going to
little
talk about some
intimidating.
processes that are going to change your life. And it really took off. I haven't treated anyone in over 20 years that hasn't used this and said, wow, this changed everything around, because what they finally understood was that there are ways to get into that internal part of us. There's a
Mhm.
real simple route in. And when they started to do that, they were phasing all this outside influence out of the picture, and they were working with themselves, and they weren't depending on, the public opinion. Peer pressure went down. They were getting very happy with themselves. So 6 years ago, I said, maybe I'm going to develop this into a text. I was being asked that by a number of people, and started to do the research. Did a lot of research on how the book should be written, design, who was going to be written for. Publishers came back and said, well, primarily you'll write it for women 18 to 60. And I said, good old self-help territory. We'll write it just for the women. I guess the women are the only ones that are supposed to change. I don't know. I said, well, I'm going to write it for everyone. I want to start around 18 and go through, 60s and 70s. That's fine. I want it to be for men and women, and for straight and gay, and for everyone. I wanted everyone to be. So that was the first thing I did. And then started thinking about a design, and I wanted the chapters short, because as I looked at self-help, there's these 40, 50, 60-page chapters, and people are telling me they're getting lost in them.
Mhm.
So I wanted to go 4 or 5 chapters. I wanted a lot of information, and then I wanted the key to the whole program to be, here are the exact steps you take to do this in every chapter. So I
Mhm.
outlined the book that way, and we published in December of 2019, and it's been, a wonderful ride since that time. A lot of people are using it. We're just turning it into an audiobook now.
Nice.
Uh, and it's really has just taken off. I think I've done about 120 interviews in 11 months.
Wow.
People are calling, and it's been so it, but the key is people are getting back to me and saying, wow, this is working. I can really see me doing this. And and it's full of all those permissions you're talking about. I don't call them that, but it's telling people, you can make your it's okay to make a decision to do this.
Mhm.
And and I start them by taking them off autopilot. I call it disconnect from what you're doing, and let's reboot. You talked about a day reboot, and I'm talking about a program where you start by rebooting. And so we start there, and we take them through 36 different chapters, and give all necessary information, and then the exact steps to fix those problems.
So you're talking about specific processes, specific
Mm-hmm.
things that we do automatically, or that connect to our own personalities, our own behaviors.
What I'm talking about are processes that we can use. If we learn to use them, we will change the way we operate, the way we think, feel, and behave. I'm talking about, for example, honesty.
Mhm.
People talk about honesty all the time. Let's be honest with each other. And then when I ask them about that, what they're telling me about bears no resemblance to honesty whatsoever. It's a surface kind of an honesty. Honesty's become one of those things that protects us, and we don't get to look at the whole issue, or the part of ourselves we don't like. So I teach him how to go deep, and he's going to get uncomfortable. I mean, there's no doubt about that in the initial going. I teach them how to slow down life's pace, because everything goes fast, and
Mhm.
there are quick fixes everywhere, and this destination and that one, and get me there, and I'll just be okay when I get there. We take that out of the picture. One of the keys to the program is learning how to use your intellect over your emotions. Not that you can't be emotional, but something comes up. We usually react. We go at
Right.
100 miles an hour, and by the time we're done, it's a horrible performance, an emotional performance. I teach them how to get their intellects engaged first, and then when you decide to emote later, you're emoting on factual information that is realistic, and organized. And so we start with that part of it. Then we go into all different kinds of things, setting boundaries and goals, and stopping things like people pleasing, and setting up walls,
Mhm.
learning boundaries and how to defend those boundaries. All different kinds of things, because when people come into the office, they say, well, gee, I'm depressed or I'm anxious. When I look at them and we start tearing things apart, there's always about 10 or 15 things that are going wrong. Well, you're doing this.
Right.
You're codependent over here. You didn't settle that abuse issue over there. And so when I wrote the book, I said, let's look at all of these. Not that everyone has all of them,
But
but
enough of us do where it does
yes, a
bear.
lot of us do,
Yeah.
and then you can take it chapter by chapter, and what I'm getting, the feedback I'm getting is finally someone said, okay, here's all the things as opposed to two or three, and in defense of self-help authors, that's what the publishers demand. Don't spread it out too wide. Focus on one or two issues, and everyone comes back saying, well, it's the same thing over and over again. So, I had a couple agents that were working with me, and I actually said, thank you, no, thank you. And I went and did this my way,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought that I was going to I wanted to make this like a counseling session in a book. And that's what I did. And then that's what people are coming back and saying, yeah, all these things, one step at a time. People tell us, you got to learn to love yourself. And I haven't heard one of the self-help gurus tell me how to do that yet. So, I teach people how to build a world inside that they really like, because that's the stepping stone to loving yourself. If you can't do that, you won't get to the love.
Right.
So we teach those kind. And so what I'm saying is I get very, very specific about what I want to do. In counseling, and you can probably see it in me as I'm talking. I'm a very dynamic counselor.
Sure.
I'm not the person you're gonna come in. I'm gonna say, well, how was your week? And I'm gonna do this for 45 minutes.
Right.
It's just not gonna happen. We're gonna start turning over the rocks. We're gonna get in deep. You're gonna get comfortable, but you're also gonna get confident. And so that's the way the book is set up. That's the way the program is set up, to learn the processes, get inside, understand how powerful you really are in there, and learn how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know for my own life, I've been a journal writer since 1983, and I've been in therapy for on and off, but mostly on since I was 20. So it's been a long time. And I do a lot of meditative things like artwork and so on that allow me a lot of headspace to process and make sense out of things. And I know the only way that I was able to figure my life out and figure out how to make myself happy and bring meaning to my own life was to undo, or at least shine a light on, childhood trauma and the things that the dysfunctionality that I grew up with in my own family, and then really analyze intellectually how my behavior was just being triggered by things that felt similar or the same to traumatic things that I survived as a kid. And a lot of it were survival mechanisms that I acquired along the way on how to deal with my bipolar, drug addicted mom. On things that I learned and then kept repeating out through all my other relationships that weren't getting me to any better of a place. What was the definition of insanity? Was to do the same thing in the same way each time and and expect a better result. And I applied that to my life. And it's an ongoing process. It isn't something that you can say, okay, check a box and that's done. It's constant refreshing and exploration and fine tuning and so on. But yeah, it's I can't recommend enough for people to do the hard work and figure themselves out, because there is nothing better than that.
You know, what I hear as you're talking, I've heard from everyone is, what's the plan? When they come in and they say, okay, you're going to help me do this, how?
Mm-hmm.
And what counselors tend to do, because it's not something you can just throw out there. They say, well, let's get some information first, and we'll see where we're going to go. And I just tell them, I have the plan. How I'm going to apply it to you will depend on what you tell me you need. But I will guarantee you, if you work the plan, just like I tell people in the book, if you work the plan, you will make the changes. There's no doubt about that. But it's not rocket science. It's basic, simple logic that
Mm-hmm.
that should be guiding our lives. But we have it so twisted, and so many different things coming in that are guiding our lives, or that we're letting guide our lives. I mean, I have just talking to someone the other day who brought in something that someone told her, and I know it was wrong when she said it, but she began to tell me about this whole new procedure. And I said, where did you get the information? My friend brought it in. Where did your friend get the information? Well, it's out there. It's a whole experts are all and by the time she was done, no one she gave me nothing about where the plan came from.
Mm-hmm.
And when we I said let's break into it. Let's just look at this thing because I want you to see what a plan is not. And we went through it and there was no plan.
There was no plan.
There has to be a plan to move forward. What are you going to follow? Because that's what you're going to work with every day. And I find that too many people are hoping that someone's going to say, okay, do this, and then I'll do it. But there's no plan. By the time I'm with someone in my office for the second or third week, they know exactly where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
We've outlined it. I said, okay, these are all the things we need to work with. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to take it one step at a time at your pace, but this is where we're going. Then they have a clear idea. That's the way I wrote the book.
That's great. So what is the first step? Somebody who's just beginning this, what's the first thing they need to sort of wrap their head around?
Taking your life off autopilot. We go forward without questioning anything. We get up every day. Yes, we do. It's that insanity thing you were just talking about. We plug into the same routines every day. We don't question them. Mm-hmm. When things go awry, we don't realize, we don't even say to ourselves, well, I'm doing the same thing every day. Eventually it's going to wear thin and I'm not going to feel good. Mm-hmm. So I tell them, let's just stop the train. Before we make any changes, let's look at all the things you're doing and put them into a little bit of a coherent perspective so you can see it. Mm-hmm. And then we'll start to go from that point. And when they can look, well, what I'm doing is very gently helping them to hold up the mirror that they've been trying to smash for the last 7+ years, Right. And once they do that and realize they can look in the mirror and that, it isn't that cracked image. It's okay. I got some things to deal with, but then we also outline a few strengths so they understand there's good in there. They're not going to go in there and find this monster of a thing that's going to come in and bite them. Right. And say, my God, now I'm that bad? No, you're not. You just have things you're not doing right. That's all. You have old, nemesis from when you were a kid that you continue to give life as you're going forward. We're gonna kill that life off, and you're gonna forgive yourself and anyone else and move on. And it's not rocket science. It's very simple to do once you stop fearing it. And that's the next thing I tell them. Give yourself permission to stop fearing, because that's hardwired into us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. We're afraid of what we're going to find.
We're afraid of everything. And then we have different ways to address that. We get angry to cover the fear. We run from the fear. We have all different kinds of things we do. All the little defenses we do to keep ourselves from looking at ourselves. And all we're doing is looking at ourselves, someone we should love. It's right. Not hard.
Yeah. A big thing for me that keeps me, I spend way too much time thinking about is body image and physical health. I've been trying to really unravel this for myself. Like, where does all of this come from? And besides the media and society and ageism and, all sorts of things that society tells us about youth and feminine beauty and so on, really a lot of it has come from my own dad and my own grandmother and their judgmental comments that they've made over the whole span of my life. And I'm in the process of doing this now for myself, unwinding all of that to figure out how that is then interpreted as my own self-dialogue, as I'm judging myself, and how I'm learning to take better care of myself, especially after menopause and everything's changing and so on. And I'm facing a different reckoning now with aging. And my continued relationship with my dad, who's now 81 and still spews the same venom that he did, just because that's his programming. So we've had some very dicey conversations as I've laid down boundaries. You know, if he's thinking those things about me, he needs to not say them out loud because I don't want to hear them. And it's helping. His forced quiet is helping my whole outlook. You're just silently nodding now.
I see this in women a lot, what you're calling body image. And, I always say, how did you arrive at the point you're at, and what the point you're at right now, what is it doing for you? And actually, the second question is more important than the first, because you can go back and see how you arrived. You can go back and say, Dad's dialogue and Mom did this, and they always had me on diets, or something physical happened to me, so I have this protection, the weight protection, all those sorts of things. But I always say, what's it doing for you now? Because if you're not changing it, then it's doing something for you.
Right.
And let's find out what it's doing for you right now. And you're probably going to find that whatever it's doing, you don't need.
Yeah. I do. The one thing I allow myself, and again, I have to stop judging myself even while I'm talking to you. That's always so fun. I am an emotional eater. And so I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't engage in physically dangerous things, but that's always been my go-to. And so I had a hysterectomy and medically induced menopause, and then immediately we went into a global pandemic. So it was like whammo, one after another. So that's where we are now. And so I know exactly how I got myself to this point, and sitting quietly and writing and so on is great for my brain and great for getting books written, but not so good for the waistline. So I know exactly how to fix it. I just haven't yet.
Which begs the obvious question. Why?
I don't know.
And sometimes, when people come in my office and they get to that point, I say, well, do you have to know before you start to change it?
No. And that's where I am now. I've slowly, I'm overwhelmed because there are so many things that I need to or want to address. And just yesterday, I decided, okay, the one thing I can do without getting off the couch is start tracking what I'm eating again. Because awareness is the key, for me anyway. So I downloaded the thing back onto my phone and I started tracking. It's just little tiny baby steps that will eventually get me where I need to be. Baby steps are still steps. So
absolutely.
And so once I stopped looking at the whole entire problem as a big, overwhelming, scary thing, and I just pared it down into individual little things that I can do, not all at once, but over time, will eventually get me where I want to go.
And it will. One of the things, the simple things I work with all the time with people is just do it. And they'll say, well, we've been thinking about this for about 3 weeks. And I say, well, I'm not sure why you haven't started.
Right.
And
start
what
before
I find
you're ready,
is
because you'll never be ready.
That's right. What happens is it becomes an autopilot way of doing things. Okay, we brought this up. Okay, yeah, I really should. I always call it the smoking syndrome. We have to quit smoking. I really should do this. I'm working on it. And I said, okay, I don't even have any idea what that means. What does it mean
right.
to work on not smoking? Either you stop smoking or you don't. So do you want to stop? Let's cut it down. And I give them an easy program. All my smokers are successful with this. And I give them that simple program. And when they start it, they're successful. Getting them to start it is an entirely different thing, because it's a comfort zone. And once it becomes a comfort zone, even if it's toxic, it's something we do every day, we don't change it.
Yeah.
We love our comfort zones.
My husband we've only been married 4.5 years, even though we've known each other for 30 some odd years. Long story. But he was a smoker his whole entire life. And I'm asthmatic and just can't tolerate the smell of cigarette smoke. And so it was a deal breaker for me. Like, either we're going to be involved and you're going to become a non-smoker, or you're going to smoke and I'm not going to be in your life. You know, it's just the way it is. And the night before our first official date was his last cigarette, and he never had another one after that.
So you saved his life.
I gave him other things to focus on and be positive about. And I think he missed it every now and then for a little while, and
Sure.
then didn't have, I mean, he bought boxes of patches and I don't think he used but a few of them. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's that easy for everybody, but it changed his mindset. It kind of like filled his pleasure centers with other things. And what's more intoxicating than new love, you know?
Mm-hmm. One of the things I do with people when they get stuck like that is I say, let's just do it. You're going to get uncomfortable. We already know that. But when you get uncomfortable, and you start to get uncomfortable, you're going to come back and you're going to give me this information about what you're uncomfortable about. And that's going to give us all this whole new picture about what's going on. But right now you're medicating. And while you're doing that, there are no symptoms anymore, because the only symptom you're dealing with now is you're smoking or you're overeating or whatever it is that you're doing. So we don't know what's going to happen until you begin to stop. So let's program some discomfort into your comfort zone and see how you react. And you're not going to fall apart. They're not going to rush you to the hospital. You're not going to hang yourself on the tree in the backyard. Nothing like that's going to happen. Let's just get this started. And then you start telling me what you feel. And what's going to happen is your discomfort's going to go back and connect to whatever it is that caused this. Because that's what you're medicating. It's common sense.
Right.
If we take that away, what do you have left? Whatever the cause of the problem is. And then we go back and we get it. And sometimes it's not taking the whole comfort zone away. Sometimes it's just invading it. Sometimes it's just sending some of our little sentinels in there, and they're going to disrupt some things for a while. And then the person says, I'm starting to feel this, and I had a dream about this, or I was thinking about this conversation with my mother or whatever. I said, we're turning on some lights here.
Right.
So do you want to keep those demons in the background where they can keep on poking you, or do you want, shall we just get the medicine out of the picture and let's go get the demons?
Right. Because they're going to be there until
they're not
we address
going anywhere.
Them. And they're going to show up in all sorts of different mind-body ways. And yeah.
Absolutely.
And
let's go put them to rest once and for all.
Exactly. It's no different than the stress-induced IBS I wind up with if I don't address things. That my anxiety goes straight to my gut. And, I could medicate that out with gastrointestinal medication, which I do sometimes. But I could also take care of the thing that's causing me anxiety, and then I no longer have the stomach ache.
Right. And this is what we do across the board. We just now have legalized marijuana because it's going to solve all our problems. No, it's not. It's going to be one more drug that we take, one more way that we're going to medicate through issues. We're never going to get to the causal points on anything. And then since it's a drug, we will deal with all the typical things that drugs do. I mean, that and it's common sense. And that's not an editorial about not using marijuana. It's just the reality of the situation. It's a drug. You're going to smoke this, those are people who do, and they're going to have some lung problems down the road. The research on marijuana tells us that, yes, in fact, we can get addicted to it, but it's been sold as we cannot. So, it's one more thing. And I tell people, you want to smoke pot, that's up to you, but can we clean your life up first? Then go enjoy.
Right.
If you're going to do that, the recreational stuff, have your mind in a place where you say, well, I'm just going to escape for a while and have a nice time, as opposed to, if I don't do this, I get stressed out, I get depressed, I get anxious, my joints hurt, or whatever it is that you're medicating it for.
Right. I know that I discovered edible cannabis because I'm asthmatic, so I don't smoke anything.
Right.
But edible cannabis as a way of mitigating pain after surgery, because because of my mom's fatal opiate addiction, I am understandably leery of Vicodin and Oxy and all sorts of things because I know what it did to her. And the few times that I have taken it for post-surgical pain and things, I have not liked how I felt. And that's a physical thing and an emotional thing because of my experience with my mother. But edible cannabis was a very effective way of mitigating post-surgical pain without some of the side effects of the opiates.
Right.
But it's a short-term
It's short-term
thing.
and it had a plan.
Right.
Again, that's different than, I got a medical card. I got a medical marijuana card because, I used to smoke pot and, at the end of the day, it took my stress away. And I say that's great. But as you get addicted to it, you'll have more stress and you'll have to smoke it because that's what's going to take the stress away. And then you're kind of caught in this whole thing. And why go there? But again, what I say is let's fix everything else. Then you make decisions, whether it's pot or anything else, down the road.
Right. You want to socially have a drink or a joint
Correct.
or a gummy candy or whatever it is that you do.
Whatever you choose to do.
Right.
But why don't we make it so it doesn't have to be part of what's supposed to fix you, because you can fix yourself.
Right. It all comes down to self-care and being aware of your stuff.
And it comes back to people's opinion of themselves. If your opinion of yourself is always going to be I'm broken, then you're always going to have something that puts tries to put you back together. When we realize that I am powerful enough to do this, I am strong enough, it's going to get uncomfortable. It's not going to kill me. And that uncomfortable place is where all my growth is. My growth is not in my comfort zone. It's not in the marijuana. There's no growth in any of that. No. The growth is in the uncomfortable part, which makes me challenge myself and find new ways to get stronger. And it's always there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's learning how to be comfortable in the discomfort for me, learning how to be okay with the vulnerability of exposure, of revealing things to myself.
I have a chapter in the book on just that, learning how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable part of things. And what I try to tell people is the brain is designed, it's called habit formation. The brain is designed with this mechanism that says, I'm comfortable here. Now, if I challenge myself, for example, if I never exercise and now I'm going to come out of my comfort zone and start doing these things, the brain is going to get comfortable there because that's what you're feeding it. Right. And you can keep on challenging it and decide how strong you want to get. But the brain is going to adjust to what we do. It always will. There's a little bit of discomfort because that's new territory and has us doing some things we haven't done before. But that's how we got into the comfort zone to begin with. The brain adjusted. So why wouldn't it do it all over again?
Right. Yeah. Just readjust to things that are healthier for us.
Exactly.
And that don't feed into the negative behaviors that we had previously been adjusted to. Yes. That makes sense. So you figure out your tolerance point. I don't want to do this anymore, whatever this is. And then for me anyway, I had to backtrack and figure out what was feeding into that, like what was the cause of that behavior. And I wrote a memoir of unraveling all of this with regards to my relationship to my mom and all of the survival behaviors and survival mechanisms that I had adapted as a kid and as an adolescent that I brought forward dysfunctionally, brought forward into my adult relationships. And I knew that I was miserable and had to unwind it, how to dig deep into my own past and figure out how to make sense out of all of that so that I could end the intergenerationality of the dysfunction, of the mental illness, of the drug addiction, and not carry it forward into my kids' lives. And I went back and read all of my journal entries from 1983 on forward, and there were so many things that I didn't remember ever having happened. And to hear my 16-year-old self or 18-year-old self talking about certain things, I was starting to see patterns of behavior that was almost like a very clear roadmap of why this behavior as an adult existed. You know, you're doing this with men in your life because of things that you learned to do with your own parents when you were a teenager.
Right.
And as I started to see my behavior in a cause and effect kind of way, it made it so much easier to redirect and to end the toxic behavior and create a healthy boundary and a new mindset for myself. And it was I didn't intend for it to be the cathartic experience that it wound up being, but I think writing it was the most pivotal self-awareness practice I could have ever embarked on.
Mm-hmm. And everybody has those little things they can do. And what you think is going to be, like you said, a small step. And that's what I always tell people, make the small steps, because first of all, they're going to connect and get you somewhere. But in the meantime, sometimes there's a small step that you don't realize was much bigger than you thought it was.
Sure.
Keep making them, because every now and then 2 or 3 kind of band together. Next thing you know, you have this memory, you have this connection to what you need to do. And, you know, I see this all the time with people. So, you know, you're right. Keep on going forward. Use whatever you have to use, whether it's writing or talking to people or whatever you need to do, but be willing to get uncomfortable a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Just recently, you started a podcast. Just a couple of months ago, I believe.
No, I've had a podcast, and I do it whenever I can get to it. You know, where I go through chapters of the book or things that I'm doing in there. So I've done that for maybe about 8 or 9 months. What I did start recently was a radio show.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did an interview with a woman by the name of Linda McKenzie, who runs healthylife.net. And it's just, you know, 50 or so people doing radio shows, and it's all designed to do basically what we're doing here. So we just we went through. I think I'm going to do the 3rd one in next week. It's a lot of fun. You know, you pick your guests and you go forward and all different kinds of things. So I actually did one with a guest who I had interviewed with 2 or 3 times, and we did this last 2 weeks ago. And the station called me back and said, "Gee, this thing took off. How would you two like to do a radio show together?" Nice. So now we're starting a 2nd one. So it's just once a month, because
sure.
Anything more, I just don't have the time to get into. But it's a lot of fun. You know, it's live, so that's the neat part of it. So
where can we listen to these?
If you go to my website, it's faustruggerio.com. There's a link, and you. But if you're interested in the whole gamut of things at healthylife.net, and it's a radio, it's internet radio, it's global. It goes across, it's out to across to the world, and like I say, I think there are about 50 of us doing radio shows on there, all doing it. It's designed to help get people get healthier, physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. Really nice format.
Excellent. I'll link all of these things, your website and healthylife.net and all of that, to the show notes of the podcast.
Great.
So if you're listening and you want this information, just scroll down and all the links will be there. Awesome. Why do you think, just as a last question here, why do you think that as humans we do tend to deprive ourselves of the happiness and the self-confidence and the power and the peace that we crave?
You know, it's a 2-pronged answer. The first one is what we learn, what we come up with. People are very, very good at spreading the wealth. Unfortunately, what they're spreading is the negativity, and we start believing it. And, you know, you're a little kid and you don't do this right, and you this and you that. Before you know it, you get this negative view of yourself. And then the internal language starts, and we get to be older, and we really believe we're not worthy of the changes and all the good things. And it's not that the past is even tearing us up anymore. Now we're afraid to move forward because we firmly believe we don't belong there. And, you want to talk about permissions. Give yourself permission to believe that you do. At the very least, go make the efforts. Do what you have to do to get better and see if you belong. You're going to find out that you do. If you do the work, the only possible outcome is that you see that you belong. So, be willing to say, yeah, I'm worthy of this, and then go forward and see what you find. That's all.
Brilliant. It's simplistic and brilliant at the same time.
And that's what it should be. If we're going to grab it, people dream up all these complex programs, these huge acronyms, and all these things that make things look wonderful. When it in its simplest form, that's the way we're supposed to live. We're a simple, straightforward life, uncomplicated. And when we strip it down, the program we're using should be simple, easy to apply, and consistently be able to work for us. That's all I put together. It's not rocket science. I grabbed what was there.
That's wonderful. And you found it inside yourself, and show us how to find it inside ourselves.
Exactly.
The Fix Yourself Handbook. And where can we pick this up? Is it available anywhere books are sold?
Yes. You can. The link is on the website, but you can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's out there in paperback and an ebook, and within the next month, it will also be there as an audiobook.
Are you narrating it yourself?
I'm not. I thought I would like to, and then I realized how much work is involved in that.
Yes.
It is a lot of work. Doing the podcast, I already know how to use the programs enough to do the podcast, but not, audiobooks are run essentially by Amazon. It's a site called ACX where they get everything done, and everything has to be to their exact standards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I recorded my own audiobook during lockdown, and I was doing it from my little home studio that I created here. And because it's in my house and I'm in the suburbs, I could only record in the middle of the night, so it would be quiet enough and there'd be no sound. And each chapter at a time, and then it was a very involved process.
And I'm still counseling full time, and I'm doing interviews, and I'm doing appearances, and I thought, what, as much as I'd like to, I found a wonderful person who has a voice that can appeal to men and soft enough for those who are more feminine or like a softer approach. And I said, it sounds really nice. I'm editing it right now. He sent it back to me. So I'll go through this. He'll get it again. They're telling me sometime mid-August we should be ready to go. So
Nice. I wish you luck with that.
I appreciate it.
I love audiobooks. To me, it's I love the comfort of listening to somebody tell me a story. And it's excellent. Well, thank you so much for this. This was a lovely conversation, and I'm sure everybody listening got something out of it.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. It was a wonderful time.
Thanks. Be well.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you who support this show on Patreon. You keep Permission to Heal up and running. If you want to become a valued patron, please go to www.patreon.com/permission to heal. That's www.patreon.com/permission to heal. After we pay expenses, 25% goes to scholarships at the Karen Treatment Centers to transform lives impacted by addiction. Your support is contributing directly to helping people and their families transform and heal from addiction. This is a cause very close to my heart, as my mother died of the effects of opiate addiction, and it tore my family to pieces. Thank you so much for supporting Permission to Heal and my mission to support others through their healing journey, through addiction, through Karen Treatment Centers. You are vital to our success. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Permission to Heal. I hope you found it moving and inspirational. Please remember, you don't need anyone else's permission to trust and follow your heart. You have the power within you. Subscribe to Permission to Heal so you don't miss any new episodes, and please share this with your friends.